For most of us, the history of colonial America is all about places like Boston, Philadelphia, Jamestown, and the British settlement of the eastern seaboard. But the archaeological history of North America tells a different story. Out here on the frontier, the story is as likely to be French and Native American as it is British. It's a story that's recorded in the sites, the cities, and the Native American settlements across the continent. From Quebec to Montreal, from Detroit to Mackinac and St. Louis to New Orleans, I'm Monty Dobson, inviting you to join me as we dig into the archaeological history of colonial America from the ground up. This episode is the story of the Europeans and their relentless pursuit of material wealth colliding head-on with the geopolitical culture of native North America. Because archaeology is the study of material culture, it can add flesh and blood to the bare bones of historical narrative. And that narrative is no more real than here in the spectacular walled city of Quebec. Quebec was founded in 1608 by this guy, Samuel de Champlain, making it one of the earliest European settlements east of the Mississippi River. The French came late to colonial expansion in North America. They came looking for precious metals and an eastward water route to the spice-rich ports of Asia. Instead, what they found was a continent filled with unbelievable natural resources, if they could only find the right market. We didn't invent being fashion-obsessed, and in the royal courts of early modern Europe, if you had any hope of being taken seriously as a fashionista, it was the beaver fur hat or nothing. But it wasn't just fashionable accessories they were after. I mean, why travel halfway around the world and risk life and limb for a new hat? Well, human beings are simple folk, and we often do things for a reason. Some of us are motivated by the quest for glory or to serve king and country. But if there's one thing that's guaranteed to get us all up off of the sofa, it's the promise of a bit of cash. Once you dangle the potential for an easy fortune in front of people, they can get pretty energetic. So what was it that first kept the French interested in North America when they didn't find gold or Asia? Believe it or not, it was a fish supper. Europeans had been exploiting the prosperous cod fisheries for some time. You might say the real monarch of North America was King Cod. A good day's fishing is one thing, and while animal rights activists might cringe at the thought of it, it was the fur trade that kicked the French economic interest in the New World into overdrive. Quebec, along with Montreal, Detroit, Mackinac, and the forts and posts of the interior, became key control points in the fur trade network that developed along the rivers and lakes of the interior. And if the King of France had any hopes of getting more out of his New World investments than a new hat, he was going to have to control those water highways. More than a pile of rocks plunked down next to the St. Lawrence River, Quebec was the key to controlling the rivers and lakes of the continent's interior. 150 miles southwest of Quebec, along the St. Lawrence River, Montreal became the major market for furs collected further inland. Unlike the English settlements in North America, New France was never about exporting a surplus population of Protestant religious zealots, peasants, and prisoners. It was about extending the glory and the influence of the King of France and his most holy ally, the Catholic Church. New France was never about the founding of large cities. Instead, it was focused on connecting up the network of small forts, settlement sites, and military centers on the interior of the continent. And that network was actually tapped into a pre-existing system of trade relationships among the continent's native inhabitants. In practice, this meant that the French were more willing to form alliances and work cooperatively with the Indians than were the British.